Two superpowers, endless rivalry. But what if I told you both of them are dependent on the same tiny nation, not through weapons, not through war, but through access, money, and control? This is the small country quietly holding two giants hostage. Picture the most dangerous rivalry on the planet. Two superpowers, two worldviews. Two systems competing not just for territory, but for the future itself. Now erase the maps filled with missiles, warships, and red lines. Zoom in instead on a single city, smaller than New York. No oil, no minerals, no farmland, no army capable of conquest. And yet, both of these giants cannot afford to lose it. Not tomorrow, not quietly, not ever. Because this city is not a battlefield. It is something far more powerful. It is a switch. In the 21st century, power doesn't always come from force. It comes from flow, from money moving without friction, from ships passing without interruption, from trust that systems will work tomorrow the same way they worked yesterday. And Singapore sits exactly where all of that converges. This matters now more than ever. As the world fractures into competing camps, the places that keep the system functioning become priceless and terrifying. Not because they are aggressive, but because breaking them would break everything else. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Singapore is not trapped between the United States and China. It is the balance point. Neither Washington nor Beijing needs to conquer it. They need it to keep working. And that dependence is the source of its power. To understand why, ask a simple question. What does a superpower actually need to survive? The United States depends on belief, faith in rules, confidence that its financial system is stable, that its currency is safe, that its navy can move freely from one ocean to another without slamming into a closed door. China depends on momentum, energy flowing in massive volumes, trade routes staying open, capital circulating globally, technology, legitimacy, and growth continuing without being strangled midstream. Now look at the map. There's one narrow artery where these needs collide. A stretch of water so tight, so unavoidable, that nearly a third of global maritime trade passes through it. Energy tankers, container ships, military fleets, the Strait of Malacca, and sitting at its throat, Singapore. This is not coincidence, it's math. If trade slows here, factories stall continents away. If energy is disrupted here, economies feel it within weeks. If trust evaporates here, capital reroutes overnight. But here's the paradox. No superpower can openly control this choke point without destroying the system it relies on. Militarize it, and global trade panics. Politicize it, and neutrality collapses. Force it, and alliances fracture. So the game is not control. The game is dependency. And Singapore mastered the art of becoming indispensable without becoming threatening. But that wasn't always the plan. In fact, this strategy was born from fear of extinction. And what Singapore did next changed the balance of power in Asia forever. But what happened after independence turned this fragile island into the most valuable pressure point on Earth. And that's where the story takes a dangerous turn. In 1965, Singapore was not a success story. It was a geopolitical orphan, expelled from a federation, surrounded by larger neighbors, no natural resources to sell, no strategic depth to defend, a young population staring at an uncertain future. Most nations in that position fail. Singapore didn't. Its leadership reached a brutal conclusion. If we are replaceable, we are dead. So they built a country designed around a single idea. Irrelevance is fatal. Instead of choosing sides, they chose systems. Instead of ideology, they chose execution. They made corruption unthinkable, courts boringly predictable, infrastructure obsessively efficient, ports that never slept, airports that never missed a connection, laws that investors trusted more than promises. They didn't sell loyalty, they sold reliability. Singapore became a place where contracts mattered more than politics, where money felt safer than in countries 10 times its size, where disputes were settled calmly, not theatrically. Neutrality wasn't just foreign policy, it became a brand. Now layer in the American system. The US doesn't dominate Asia alone. It operates through networks, alliances, logistics, information, access. That network needs a stable, discrete center, somewhere politically safe, somewhere competent, somewhere not poisoned by colonial resentment. Singapore became that node. American naval logistics moved through its ports. Surveillance aircraft rotated through its facilities. Warships docked without fanfare. But notice the wording. Facilities, not bases. That distinction matters. A base is ownership. A facility is permission. It allows the US to operate without forcing Singapore into a visible alliance. Power without fingerprints. Presence without provocation. Now layer in China. China's greatest vulnerability isn't military, it's economic circulation, energy imports, trade flows, financial access. Beijing knows the Strait of Malacca is a pressure point it cannot afford to lose, but also cannot militarize without triggering disaster. So what does it need? Neutral ground. A trusted financial hub outside Western political storms. A place where Chinese companies can raise capital, manage global investments, resolve disputes, and quietly integrate into the world economy. Hong Kong became unstable. Shanghai is inward-facing. Singapore filled the gap. A Chinese-speaking business culture, Western legal standards, global credibility, a financial system plugged into every major market. For China's elite, Singapore isn't foreign territory. It's a dashboard. Now look at the result. American banks and Chinese state firms share the same skyline. U.S. defense cooperation exists alongside Chinese trade dominance. Data cables, shipping lanes, money flows, all crossing the same island. This is not balance. This is tension engineered into concrete. Singapore survives by refusing purity, by rejecting absolutes, by living inside contradiction. But that strategy has a cost. Because the stronger the rivalry becomes, the harder it is to stay perfectly still. And the moment one side believes Singapore has tilted even slightly, the protection vanishes. That's when pressure turns existential. And this is where the video takes a shocking turn, because the system that protects Singapore may also be the thing that puts it in the most danger. Walk through Singapore today and you can see the rivalry etched into everyday life. Financial towers housing American institutions cast shadows over offices of Chinese banks. Cargo from U.S. retailers moves on cranes built by Chinese manufacturers. Data from Silicon Valley and Shenzhen races through the same undersea cables. In theory, this should be impossible. In practice, it's the future. The 21st century isn't bipolar, it's interlocked. And Singapore is the lock. This is why neither Washington nor Beijing pushes too hard. They apply pressure, but carefully. Because forcing a choice would collapse the very utility they rely on. If Singapore becomes openly American-aligned, China reroutes trade and capital. If it becomes openly Chinese-aligned, the U.S. restricts access and trust evaporates. Either scenario destroys its value. So Singapore's answer to both is the same. No declarations. No blocks, no crusades. That refusal is not weakness, it is survival logic. This creates a strange outcome. Two superpowers quietly agreeing to tolerate ambiguity because the alternative is worse. Singapore becomes the fuse no one wants to light. This is the real lesson. In an interconnected world, power belongs not just to those who command force, but to those who understand how systems break. Singapore doesn't threaten anyone. It simply makes itself too expensive to disrupt. And that may be the most sophisticated form of power in our age. As rivalry deepens, more places will try to copy this model. Some will fail. Because neutrality without credibility is meaningless, efficiency without trust is fragile, and indispensability must be earned over decades. Singapore earned it through discipline, fear, and relentless precision. It wrote rules neither giant publicly acknowledges, but both obey. And as long as the global system still matters, the keeper of the switch will matter more. Because sometimes the most dangerous position in the world isn't the front line, it's the control room. This story isn't just about Singapore. It's about how power really works now, quietly, structurally, invisibly. As giants clash, the smartest players don't fight them head on. They become unavoidable. If this perspective helped you see global power differently, support Economic Tales, where we decode the hidden mechanics behind the world's biggest shifts. And ask yourself this: as the world divides, how many other small places are watching Singapore? Learning that in the age of giants, survival belongs to those who become indispensable? Stay curious.